Shalom. I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai Bahashem, Rachakodash. I want to give double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, because those are the men who I learned this truth from through the spirit and power of Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai. Yahweh is the true name of the God of Israel. Yahweh Shai is who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ, but his one and only true name is Yahweh Shai. And pretty much I want to do a video still sticking to that topic from last week of us living in the time of the Gentiles. So when you read Daniel the 2nd chapter, as well as Daniel the 7th chapter, plenty of scriptures, scriptures like 2nd Ezra 6 and 9, it gives you a biblical timeline of what nations will rule before Yahweh Shai returns back. The last heathen nation to rule, according to the scriptures, would be who? The Edomites, all right? The so-called white man and his sea line. So that's what we currently see. They control all countries, nations, islands through the banking system, through the central banks, all right? They control all nations' money supply. Everybody got a price, and they could be, brought and controlled for their agendas. So that's what's going on. So without further ado, we're going to get into it, because we're living during the time of the revived Roman Empire, which one nation was ruling over the revived Roman Empire. It's the Edomites, the so-called white man and his sea line. All right. So without further ado, let's get into it. So the topic is going to be this. All right. Daniel chapter 2, verses 41 through 43, dealing with the iron and the clay, which represents the revived Roman Empire, aka the second beast that copies the first beast, which is the ancient Roman Empire. All right. As you can see here, the iron and the clay representing what? A separation. Some countries is stronger economically and military might than other particular countries, right? Because the 10 toes, it represents the EU, all right? The same thing you read about in Revelation 17, the 10 horns. It's the same thing in Daniel the 2nd chapter concerning the 10 toes, all right? So now let's get into it. So this is Daniel chapter 2 and verse 40 on down. Now notice how it says Rome, but it don't mention nothing about a revived Roman Empire or a second beast, because technically this is still Rome. As I'm going to show you later on in the lesson, the deadly one was here, meaning Rome is back in power, but we not in ancient Rome no more. We in a revived Roman Empire. So this is Daniel chapter 2. I'm going to start at verse 40. It says, "And the fourth kingdom shall be strong as iron." Now, when you read Daniel the 2nd chapter, right, you notice that this statue is made up of different metals. Now, the lower you get in the statue, it goes from gold, which is the softest metal out of all these metals, and iron is the most durable. A lot of swords is made out of what? Iron. All right. Iron representing what? It's a stronger metal, meaning that the Roman Empire, out of all these nations right here, the Assyrian Babylonian Empire, the Medo-Persian Empire, the Greek Empire, the Roman Empire has the strongest military might. That's why it's iron. Gold is soft metal. You could break gold with your hand. 24 karat gold, you could break it with your hand. This is why here in America mainly, you have 14 karat gold, you got 10 karat gold, so it could be more durable. It could be harder. It could be preserved longer. Because 24 karat gold, you could easily bend and break it. All right. So the iron is talking about the first beast, which is the ancient Roman Empire, from 168 BC to 476 AD. All right. And they're also known as what? The dragon, as you can see right here. All right. So now let's go back. So Daniel 2 and 40, "And the fourth kingdom shall be as strong as iron, for as much as iron breaketh in pieces, and subdueth all things, and as iron that breaketh all these shall it break in pieces and bruise. And that's what the Roman Empire did. No nation could take down the Roman Empire. All right, the Roman Empire, if they went to war with you, you was definitely going to lose. That's why the scripture got that particular kingdom as what? Iron. All right, the strongest metal. It's more durable than gold, silver, and brass. All right, it's representing what? Rome's military might. It says 41, and whereas thou sowest the feet and toes. Now this is the topic of the video I'm doing, right? Because today in modern time, this is where we at in the biblical timeline. We're at the 10 toes. That's how we know that we're in a generation when YAHSHAWAR is getting ready to come back. Because now we're in a revived Roman Empire, right? And plus these end time prophecies, you link it up with current events to understand the time period you're living in. So this is Daniel 2 and 41. And whereas thou sowest the feet and toes, part of the potter's clay and part of iron. Now the 10 toes is representing the EU. In Revelation 17, it's called 10 horns because Daniel and John, they had a similar vision. Just like any other prophet, they had similar visions. Some may have saw more of the prophecy more than others, but all the prophets is in conjunction with one another. They all coming with the same message. All right. So it says what? Part of the potter's clay, part of iron, right? So now you have particular EU nations that's stronger economically and military wise than other EU nations, right? It says, and part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided. And that's what you got going on. That's why you have things like Brexit, Frexit, things like EU nations, having referendums, pretty much voting to leave the EU and establish a form of independence. So that's division. They're divided, right? It says, but there shall be in it of the strength of iron, for as much as thou sawest the iron mixed with miry clay. So this is what it's talking about right here. All right, it's referring to the statue, as you can see right here. So at the end times, Rome, it would be revived in the form of America and the EU, but it would be divided on particular things. So now when you read Matthew 12 and 26, it says what? If Satan be divided against Satan, or if a kingdom be divided against a kingdom, how shall it stand? Right? So that's what it's referring to, the iron and the clay. Some nations, they have stronger economic and military might, that's in the EU, and the other ones, they're weaker, they're clay. Clay is soft, iron is hard, right? So now let's jump back. So going down here, it says 42, and as the toes of the feet were part of iron, meaning some EU nations, they're stronger, as I keep on saying, right? It says, and part of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. And that's what we're seeing with these EU nations, right? It says 43, and whereas thou sawest the iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. So we're going to keep that open because we're going to go back to that. So I went to Google, right? And now what you notice is, all the camps, the gospel and the doctrine that we teach, the AI, it knows what we teach, right? So this is actually good for lessons. So you go to the AI overview, right? This is what I typed in. I typed in NATO and the EU represent the 10 toes, right? And Daniel. So now this is the AI overview. The interpretation of the 10 toes in Daniel 2 often identified them as a fragmented final European superpower, right? Or superpowers, with many commentators suggesting the European Union, which is the EU, or a combination of the EU and NATO fulfills this prophecy. Because NATO and the EU make up the beast in Revelation, the 17th chapter. All right. And the scriptures talk about how there's a whore that rideth upon the beast. The whore is referring to America. All right, America is that little horn that you read about in Daniel 7 and 8, because America got its independence from Great Britain, right? So it goes on to say, yep, this view sees the EU/NATO as a fragile, non-cohesive alliance, iron mixed with clay, that follows the Roman Empire. Exactly. And in this lesson, I'm going to show you how America, as well as the EU, it is the revived Roman Empire, because there's so many different, there's a lot of similarities. All right. It says that follows the Roman Empire and exists just before a predicted divine intervention. Exactly. Because what nation will be in rulership when YAHAWAHBA returns back? The Edomites, the so-called white men in Ceylon. They control everything. All right. If you want to live, if you think that the Edomites is not ruling right now, if you don't think that the so-called white man, he's the descendant of Esau, Edom, then you stupid, because they control absolutely everything. It goes on to say, key perspectives on the 10 toes interpretation. It says European Union / revived Roman Empire. Many interpreters, particularly within Adventist circles, view the EU as a direct yet fragile successor to the Roman Empire, representing the weakened state of the final power. It says NATO / Anglo-American alliance. Others suggest the 10 toes represent a broader Western coalition, often poured into NATO, or an Anglo-American alliance, which holds immense strength, iron, right, military might, but lacks social unity, clay. Exactly. And that's the division part. Some is iron, some is clay, right? It says historical Germanic tribes, because the modern day 10 horns, right, they had different names during the first beast. It says historical Germanic tribes, right? An alternative interpretation sees the 10 toes as representing the various Germanic tribes that took over after the Roman Empire's power shifted to Constantinople, which ultimately evolved into modern European nations. All right, let's go down here. It says symbolic fullness. Some argue that trying to enumerate 10 specific nations is a mistake, arguing that the number, okay, that's stupid, I don't gotta read that. So right here, division and fragility. A core theme is that these, like the iron and clay mixture, indicate a divided yet temporarily united superpower that will not adhere to one another. And then the scriptures tell you what in Revelation 17-16, how the beast, which represents the EU and the NATO nations, they're going to turn against America and launch thermonuclear missiles on America, because it says it's going to burn the whole with fire. All right. So that's it with that. Now check this out. Now I typed in on Google part iron, part clay, meaning some economies stronger than others, right? AL overview. The phrase part iron, part clay originates from the book of Daniel, chapter 2, referring to a statue in King Nebuchadnezzar's dream that represents a final divided kingdom. Daniel interpreted the iron legs as a kingdom of great strength, often interpreted as Rome. Yeah, because it is talking about Rome. It says, and defeat of mixed iron and clay as a later fragmented phrase. Yeah, because it's the revived Roman Empire, but its kingdom is divided. They're not totally united, right? Let's go down here. It says meaning in the context of economies and nations. It says the imagery of iron mixed with clay highlights a world with a mixture of strong and weak economies and nations that struggle to form lasting unity. Part strong, right? Referring to iron. It says some regions, nations, or elements within the global alliance retain significant power, including political clout, economic muscle, and military strength. So that's why it says part iron, and then it's going to go into the clay part. It says partly brittle / weak clay. Other parts of the system are weak, fragile, and prone to economic or social collapse. The mixture. Just as iron and clay cannot properly fuse together, the prophecy suggests that diverse economies, nations, or political structures such as authoritarian, I can't pronounce that word too clear, but whatever, iron and democratic clay will try to integrate but will not truly bond. And that's what we're seeing in politics, right? It says interpretation and application. It says divided alliances. The prophecy is often interpreted as referring to a divided political structure, right? The European Union, the NATO alliance, or the Anglo-American alliance. It says unstable unity. While nations may unite through economic pacts or intermarriage, they will not remain fully united. Pursuant to what? Daniel 2:43, indicating a lack of true economic or political cohesion. It says incapability. It says the clay is sometimes interpreted as representing the common people. And then they put democratic influence, right? It says in modern governments, which can undermine the authoritarian, right? They go that word again. Iron-like abilities of governments to act decisively, right? Let's just search this word up just for edification, all right? Search it up.
Authoritarian. Authoritarian.
All right. It says that word means favoring complete obedience or subject to authority as opposed to individual freedom. It says, or of relating to a governmental or political system, principle, or practice in which individual freedom is held as completely subordinate to the power or authority of the state, centered either in one person or a small group that is not constitutionally accountable to the people, exercising complete or almost complete control over the will of another or of others. All right, so that's what that word means. So that's it with that. Now let's go all the way back up here, right? Let's see. Yep. So it says, yep, iron-like ability of governments to act decisively. So that's the summary, all right? Pursuant to Daniel 2:43, it says part iron, part clay signifies that while some nations or economies will hold strong power, iron, others will be fragile, brittle, clay, resulting in a eternally unstable global system that lacks cohesion and is prone to political or economic fracturing. All right, so that's what Daniel 2:43 talk about. So I'm gonna read 42 and 43 again, and then I'm gonna read that part. So this is Daniel chapter 2, verse 42 again. It says, and as the toes of the feet were part iron and part clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. And whereas thou sowest iron mixed with the miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. All right. So once again, what is that referring to? Part iron, part clay signifies that while some nations or economies will hold strong power, right? A nation like France or Germany, others will be fragile or brittle, which is clay, resulting in a eternally unstable global system that lacks cohesion and is prone to political or economic fracturing. Like a country like Greece is considered clay. All right. So there you go. So back to the 10 toes, right? Because like I said, the 10 toes, it has ancient names like Visigoths and stuff like that, right? But we got to focus on today. It's being called something completely new. It's the revived Roman Empire. So they got new names. They don't got the ancient names from Rome, right? So I typed in ECC 1958, and this is what popped up. The European Economic Community, which represents the EEC, officially came into existence on January 1st, 1958. Because once again, the 10 toes in Daniel is the same 10 that's the 10 horns in Revelation 17, as you can see right here. All right, there you go. The 10 toes or 10 horns, originally Belgium, Denmark, France, Italy, Luxembourg, Netherlands, Greece, Ireland, England, West Germany, right? These are the modern names, but in the ancient world, they had ancient names, right? So as you can see right here, the 10 toes or the 10 horns represents the common market or the European Economic Community, EEC. That's why I'm reading it. Established in 1958. Today, the EEC is known as the EU, the European Union. So the 10 toes or 10 horns, which is the same thing, it represents the EU. All right. That's why I'm reading this. So the European Economic Community, EEC, officially came into existence on January 1st, 1958, following a 1957 treaty signed by 6 countries. As you can see right here, what I just read: Belgium, France, Italy, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, and West Germany, often called the Common Market. This organization aimed to foster economic integration and cooperation in other sectors. All right, so this is the 10 horns, this is the 10 toes. Key facts about 1958 EEC, the founding treaty. The treaties of Rome, right, created the EEC and the European Atomic Energy Community. Let's go down here. The founding members: Belgium, France, Italy, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, and West Germany. It says purpose: to expand economic cooperation, building on the success of Coal and Steel Treaty. Context: this was a pivotal moment in the history of the European Union, marking the start of a broader economic union from 1945 to 1959. And when they established it, they called it the Treaty of Rome, proving that what? We in the revived Roman Empire. All right. So now, let's keep it going. So now let's get to this part. This is I'll start at 11. This is Revelation 13:11. And as you can see, the subject, the headline, it says the beast from the earth, meaning what? New beast. So this is Revelation 13 and verse 11. And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb. The 2 horns, pursuant to the first beast, which is the ancient Roman Empire, the 2 horns represents the Flavians and the Patricians, which today in the revived Roman Empire, they're called the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, right? They speak as a lamb because they speak what? Promising things. Oh, we're going to help cure the debt crisis. Oh, we're going to help you with this. We're going to help you with that. We're for the people. But they're not helping the people. Look at what's going on right now with this partial government shutdown. Most of you dumbass people, you're Democrats, right? Who you think is responsible for the last couple of government shutdowns? The Democratic Party. But they supposed to be for the people. They supposed to be for the poor. See, they speak as a lamb, but it's 2 sides of one coin. All right. It says, and he spake as a dragon, right? That's a so-called white man for you. When you read Psalms 55, verses 20 and 21, his words were smoother than butter, but war was in his heart. It's all about global domination for the Edomites, all right? That's all they care about, control. They want to fulfill their 2030 agenda, which is the New World Order agenda, all right? Let's go down here, though. It says 12. It says, and he, referring to Esau, Edom, exerciseth, right, all the power of the first beast before him. Now, who's the first beast before him? The ancient Roman Empire, his old kingdom. That's why there's so many similarities between not only just Rome, America, and the EU, but Greece, Rome, America, and the EU, because it was controlled and ran by the same nation, which is who? The Edomites, the so-called white man and his seed line. All right? You look at ancient Greece, you look at ancient Rome, you look at America with the stadiums. Back then you had the Colosseums. You know, you had the gladiators fighting unto death, right? Everything is revived. Everything you see in modern day life is the same thing we saw back in the incarnation, all right, of ancient Rome. It's the same shit that you see. The street vendors, malls, apartments, mail delivery systems, everything, all right, it's all revived. Everything you see in your modern day life, it was back during the ancient Roman Empire. That's where the idea come from, all right? So now let's go back. I'm going to read again. Revelation 13:12. And he, referring to Esau, Edom, and his descendants, exerciseth all the power of the first beast before him. That's why even the judicial system, everything is the same. The courthouse, the White House, the symbol of America and particular EU nations, having the symbol of the eagle, which is the same thing you see in Mount Seir if you search it up. Because who's ruling? The Edomites, the so-called white man and his seed line. All right? And I'm going to show you in particular how he exercises all the power of the first beast. But then it goes on to say what? Before him, and he causeth the earth and them that dwell, and them which dwell therein, to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. So that's why when you read Daniel the 2nd chapter, from verses 40 to 43, it talks about Rome, but it doesn't separate when it talks about it being a revived Roman Empire. All right, they just got it listed as Rome, because technically America and the EU is just a continuation of Rome. That's why I said the deadly wound was healed. All right, so now let me show you how he exercised all the power of the first beast. So now check this out, right? This is just one thing, but check this out though. I'm gonna read this. So now look, I was actually looking for an image because I did lessons on this on my old channels that got banned, but I couldn't find the image that I used in the past, right? But anyways, I typed in image showing how America and the EU is similar to Rome, right? This is what came up. It's the AI overview. It says parallels between Rome, the USA, and the EU. It says modern Western powers often mirror, right? If you mirror something, what that mean? That means you're mimicking or you're copying. You're exercising the power of the first beast, as it says in Revelation 13:12, right? It says mirror ancient Rome through their political structures, right? It's the same layout for the buildings. They even got Latin on particular monuments and walls and stuff like that, right? Everything is exactly the same. It says geographical scale and cultural influence, right? The architecture, everything. It says while the United States is frequently compared to the Roman Republic in its governance and military reach, the European Union is often viewed as a revived version of the empire due to its supranational legal framework and geographical overlap. So everybody knows that we're in the revived Roman Empire, all right? It says political and legal governance, because it's showing what? The parallels, the similarities, because this is the revived Roman Empire. The deadly wound is healed. The deadly wound got healed during what? The Renaissance era, all right? When the Edomites, they started coming back into power, and they got their power from Spain. The power came out of Spain, right? Political and legal governance. The U.S. and EU both utilize foundational principles established by the Romans. He exerciseth all the power of the first beast before him, right? To manage complex multi-territorial societies. It says representative republics. The U.S. government was explicitly modeled after the Roman Republic. Come on, man. This is exactly what the scriptures is talking about. It says incorporating a Senate, a separation of powers between branches, right? And a system of checks and balances, legal foundations. Roman law, particularly the concept of a central authority mediating laws across diverse regions, underpins the modern legal codes of the EU, France, Italy, and Latin America. That's why when they came together, what do they call it? They call it the Treaty of Rome. Why would they call it that? Because it is Rome. It says administrative integration. Like the EU, Rome used differentiated integration, employing various flexible treaties to tie individual cities or tribes into larger confederation rather than forcing immediate homogeneity. All right. It says geographic and economic scale. The sheer size and economic integration of these modern entities directly mirror the Roman peak. Territorial overlap. The EU spans much of the same territory once governed by Rome. The original member states of the European Economic Community correspond geographically to core Roman provinces. Because once again, during the first beast, which is the ancient Roman Empire, all right, the original names, they had ancient names. But today, the names is different, but it's modeled after those 10 Germanic tribes. All right. It goes on to say, continental expansion. The continental expansion of the United States and its current global military budget mirror the Roman Empire's historical dominance. All right. That's why it's iron. Iron represents what? Strong military might, strong economy. It says unified markets. Both Rome and the EU established single currencies, the denarius and the euro, and remove eternal barriers to trade to foster economy prosperity across vast distances, right? So even the barter system that we use is modeled after what? Rome, all right? It says cultural and agricultural legacy. It says Rome's influence remains visible in the symbols and physical structures of modern Western nations. It says neoclassical agriculture. U.S. government buildings such as the U.S. Capitol use fluted white columns and domes inspired by Roman temples like the Pantheon. You can't make, like, come on. You think, like, we just make the doctrine up? You think we just we just make shit up? We ain't making nothing up. All right, when you read 2 Peter 1 and 20, we speak through the Holy Spirit, through Yahweh's blood and sacrifice. All right? We know what we talk about. We confident in what we talk about. The Lord said what? In Luke 21 and 15. I'm going to give you a mouth which your adversary shall not be able to gainsay nor resist. You can't debunk what the hell I'm saying. It says shared infrastructure ideals. Modern systems like highways, water transport, like tunnels/pipes, and large-scale entertainment stadia, right? The stadiums, the coliseums, right? Reflect the Roman ideal that infrastructure is central to national power. Civic symbols. It says icons like the eagle. See, everything I was saying earlier. The fasces and the Statue of Liberty, it says reminiscent of Roman goddesses, were adopted to emphasize rule and freedom. Summary of key similarities. All right, got ancient Rome on the left, America on the right. It says legislature, Senate of 300 life members. Legislature, Senate of 100 members. Executive, 2 councils, 1-year term. Executive for America, 1 president, 4-year term. Legal code, 12 tables. Legal code for America, U.S. Constitution. Currency for Rome, denarius, which is coins, right? America, U.S. dollar. And we also use the same similar thing, which is like coins, you know, quarters, nickels, dimes, pennies, right? So come on, you can't make this up. He exerciseth all the power of the first beast. Look at this shit. Look, United States on the left, the ancient Roman Empire, the first beast on the right. So you got the second beast, you got the first beast, right? It says, has despotic rulers, had a long and dramatic fall, conflicts with Persians. Ain't that something? They both had conflicts with Persians. It says problems with the border. Come on, man. Towards its end, politics became more and more absurd. Come on, man. Can't make this up. What else I got here? Oh, you even had social media during ancient Rome. Y'all think, oh, this is a 21st century invention. Yeah, it's more advanced now, because it says in Daniel, the 12th chapter, that what? Wisdom and knowledge, it was going to be increased. So, of course, shit is more advanced, right? You got handheld devices. But the thought and the idea to make this type of technology, obviously it comes from the Most High, common sense. But the idea comes from ancient Rome, all right? And ancient Greece. So now check this out. I typed in social media in ancient Rome, right? This is the AI overview. Social media in ancient Rome functioned through a social network of elite letter sharing. Like when you comment, it says graffiti. Come on, like you like read. Look at what I'm reading right now. Everything you see, graffiti, people commenting, right? People have open forums. You got Reddit forums, Quora.com, YouTube, just the internet in general. All this existed in a different format in ancient Rome and Greece. All right. Graffiti and public news bulletin boards, creating a 1st century BC version of online interaction. I mean, like, I could just stop doing the video right now. He exercises all the power of the first beast, right? Romans used scribes and messengers to spread political commentary and personal news via papyrus. It's just like today. People get the Daily Mail. You know, they get that paper early in the morning to start their day, right? While graffiti in cities like Pompeii served as public forums for gossip, advertising, and opinions. Key aspects of Roman social media. The letter network. Elite Romans like Cicero frequently exchanged copied and passed on letters containing political gossip and commentary, acting as a retweet mechanism. That's the first Twitter right there, or the first X. It says graffiti as public commentary. Thousands of messages, including ads, complaints, and graffiti in Pompeii, acted as a community forum similar to modern public posts. They got this Latin term, the AHDAWAM. I'll probably pronounce that wrong. I really don't care. It says meaning daily public records. These were official daily news reports, carved in stone or metal and displayed in public, serving as a physical top-down news feed. Commonplace books. Individuals curated collections of interesting quotes, poems, and notes, all right, which is similar to these particular sites like Tumblr or Pinterest, to share with friends. It says abbreviations. Just as we use abbreviations today, Romans used shorthand, like what you see right there. You know, like when you write like LOL and stuff like that, laughing my ass off, right? Or WTF. It says, if you are well, that's good, right? To quickly sign off letters. Let's go down here. So it says these interactions created a conversational two-way and horizontal network for sharing information mirroring the structure, if not the speed of modern social media. Can't make this up, man. You even had shopping malls during the ancient Roman Empire, just like how you got it in America and the EU today, right? So I typed in ancient Rome had malls, right? AI overview. It says ancient Rome pioneered the concept of the modern shopping center with the Trojans market, right? And they got it in Latin right there. Widely considered the world's first shopping mall, right? Built between 100 and 110 AD under Emperor Trajan. This massive multi-level complex, just like when you go to a mall, was designed by the renowned architect, all right? And they got that crazy-ass name right there of Damascus, right? There you go. Let's go down here. Trojans Market, the world's first mall. So there you go. It says the complex was an agricultural marvel constructed of red brick and concrete. So there you go, man. Can't make this up. The structure, it consisted of 6 terrace levels housing over 150 individual spaces, including shops, offices, and warehouse. It says the turbini. Most shops called turbini were located on the low levels and open directly on the street or eternal corridors. It's the same thing you see today with street vendors. People got like their little stores, their little mom and pop shops. You had that same shit in Rome, right? The Great Hall. It says a massive central vaulted space, likely used for public gatherings, speeches, and potentially as a distribution point for the grain door, right? Let's go down here. And they got another Latin phrase. It says an ancient shopping street located on an upper level. It says name for the Latin word Barbary, which means to drink, suggesting it was lined with taverns and beverage shops. Yeah, so you had bars back then too. So all the activities people like to do, they was doing it in ancient Rome in the past. All right. They even got an image, but you know, it looks a little blurry. Yeah, man. They had shopping malls. This is the revived Roman Empire. See, the shopping experience. Ancient Romans could find a vast array of goods from across the empire in one centralized location. Daily necessities, luxury goods, innovation, all right, transactions. Shoppers sometimes use pre-purchase tokens to streamline their trades with vendors. All right. So, I mean, there you go, man. There you go. Look, check this out. It's an image in ancient Rome. There was the Circus Publicus, an imperial postal system. So just like how we got UPS, we got the post office, we got FedEx, DHL, all these delivery services where you order things online and they deliver it to your doorstep. They had the same thing in ancient Rome. This is the ancient Roman Empire revived, right? It says an imperial postal system supported by horses and carts, quickly connecting the entire empire. Let's go right here. Even the money, right? They compared the denarius to what? The coins we use, or the dollar, right? It's the same model. They just changed the name of the company and its location. See? The Greek Empire, you see the eagle, you see a white man. Roman Empire, what you see, the eagle, you see a white man. America, what you see, the eagle, you see a white man. I mean, come on, man. How the fuck is the Edomites descendants of Japheth? They not. They took over that land. I did a video on it. All right? Look at all this. I typed in on Google, is America and the EU ancient Rome similarities? I always spell it wrong. It says both America and the European Union, EU, share striking similarities. Why? Because Revelation 13 and 12 says what? He exerciseth all the power of the first beast. Meaning what? He's going to mimic or copy what his old empire did, which is the first beast, ancient Rome. That's where they get the ideas from. It's just more modern now through technology because wisdom is increased. So it says, striking similarities with ancient Rome, functioning as dominant multicultural superpowers with extensive legal, military, and infrastructure systems. Key parallels include the U.S. Utilizing, I'm probably saying that wrong, but you see how I spell, a Roman-style Senate, Republican government, and checks and balances. All right? So, I mean, it's pretty much what I already read already. This ain't really nothing new. All right? That's it with that. So now let me show you some more. So let me just read it one more time, and let me show you some things I found on Pinterest. You might find it interesting. Revelation 13:12, and he, referring to Esau, Edom, right, exercises all the power of the first beast. Let's go into this word power, right? Let's go into it.
Strong's G, 1849, exousia. Exousia.
That's the Greek word for power. Revelation 13:12. It says power of choice, liberty of doing as one pleases, right? Physical and mental power. The ability or strength with which one is induced or endowed, right, from the Most High to fulfill end-time prophecy, which he either possesses or exercises. The power of authority, influence, and the right of privilege. The power of authority, which America and the EU nations is influenced by, is what? What nation? What ancient empire? Ancient Rome, right? The power of rule or government, the power of him whose will and commands must be submitted to by others and obeyed universally, right? Authority over mankind. The whole world is under the influence of ancient Rome. It don't matter what country you go to, they're going to have the same type of system. Why is that? Because the Edomites is ruling. All right? Continuing on. It says, authority over mankind, specifically the power of judicial decisions, which is based off of what? Ancient Rome. That's why they got a Senate, House of Representatives, an executive branch, presidents, which is nothing but modern day Caesars, right? They even got Rome had three political parties too. I forget the last one. But you have Flavians, Patricians. Today, you have Democrat, Republican, and like the Independent Party. Rome has that version as well. You can search it up. It says, of authority to manage domestic affairs. Jurisdiction. So, I mean, you get the point. Like, America and the EU is the revived Roman Empire. I don't know what's so hard to understand about that. It says, Revelation 13:12, and he exerciseth all the power of the first beast before him. The first beast is ancient Rome. And he causeth the earth and them that dwell therein to worship the first beast. That's what everybody's doing. Everybody's under Roman influence. It says, whose deadly wound was healed. It was healed during what? The Renaissance era, which is the rebirth of the Edomites coming back into rulership. And like I said, that power came out of Spain, right? Queen Isabella, King Ferdinand. They financed Cristobal Colon, known as Christopher Columbus, his voyages. All right? Because Spain was the top power back then. So that's it with that. Now let me show you on Pinterest. As you can see, this is definitely the ancient Roman Empire all over again. All right? That one. Let me show you some more. Look at that. Colosseum. And you can pause the screen and look at it. I'm just going to speed it up, for the sake of the video. See the Colosseum. Look at that. All your entertainment, sports, and all that come from ancient Rome. It's modeled after ancient Rome. See, Colosseum, which is your modern day stadiums. Got the military, right? Look at that. The Roman engineering and achievements. Yeah, gravel roads, highways. They had that in Rome. See? Pause the screen, look at it. He exercises all the power of the first beast before him. Yeah, they had furniture, they had tables, yeah. This is the revived Roman Empire. See, it's one thing to hear it, but it's one thing to do your own research and see it for yourself. So you could be fully persuaded in your own mind. Landmarks, tourist attractions, they had that in Rome. All nations wanted to go to Rome and see what was going on there because they heard how wonderful it is, right? You have townhouses, you have villas, central heated systems. I mean, pause the screen and read it. All right? Look at that. The same exact things you see, bridges and all, they had that back then. See? Different type of fashions. So I mean, like, you get the point. You get the point. Check this out.
The trees, often found near bathhouses, featured long benches with carved out holes, no partitions, and definitely no privacy. Fresh water flowed beneath the seats, whisking away waste in a marvel of Roman engineering. Because these restrooms were so communal, conversation was common. People might talk politics, gossip, or simply catch up on local news. Instead of toilet paper, they used a sponge on a stick called a tessorium, dipped in water, something that might raise eyebrows today, but was perfectly normal in Rome's heyday. Beyond hygiene, these spaces reflected the Roman emphasis on community, innovation, and practicality. So the next time you hear someone complain about public restrooms, just imagine sharing a seat, literally, with a stranger 2,000 years ago. In ancient Rome.
Yeah, you got similar stuff like that today. People sit down, they go to the bathroom, right? Even jail is like that. You know, certain venues, the bars is like that. Everything is out in the open. Very similar. Now look at this. I mean, you pretty much get the point. So now let me jump back to the scriptures. I'm gonna finish it off with this. This is 2nd Ezra 6 and 9. It says, "For Esau is the end of the world," meaning at the end of this present age, the Edomites and their descendants, they will be ruling. That's why all countries have a central bank in it. All countries' money supply is controlled and created by the Edomites. The Edomites control everything. It says, "And Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth," which represents Yahushua and the Israelites ruling forever in the kingdom of heaven. Our overview, 2nd Ezra 6 and 9 states, right, that's the scripture. This verse highlights a symbolic transition where Esau represents the conclusion of the current age, going back to the Greek word eon, and Jacob represents the start of the new age, connecting to the biblical narrative of their birth. It says some symbolism, key contextual details. Esau, the elder brother, signifies the end of the current corrupted world, while Jacob, the younger brother, signifies the beginning of the righteous world that comes after. It says context within 2nd Ezra. This verse is part of a dialogue where the angel tells Ezra about signs of the end of the world and the unfolding of the next era. It says significance. The verse often appears in discussions of prophecy, timelines of the world, and interpretations of the end times. Yeah, so they know that the Edomites is in rulership right now. And the Edomites, which is the so-called white man in the sea line, they know that they're the Edomites, the elite. That's why they got names like Rothschild, which is Red Shield, Rockefeller. It has a red root in the name, going back to what? They know that they're Edomites. All right, so that's pretty much it. Hopefully, you was edified by the lesson. Shalom.